Hello, good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming. I will introduce myself very quickly. I'm Amadeo Solari from the Mission of Peru. I will be the press liaison officer during the month of July, during the Presidency of Peru. I would like to, of course, introduce Ambassador Meza Cuadra, who will do a presentation of the program of work for the month of July, and also introduce Minister Paul Duclos, our political coordinator. Ambassador Meza Cuadra will do a brief presentation of the program of work, and then we'll open the room for questions and answers. If you ask the question in English, we will answer in English, and if the question is in Spanish, we will answer in Spanish. Just for your knowledge. So now, without further ado, I give the floor to Ambassador Meza Cuadra. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. Peru has assumed the presidency of Security Council for the second time in this tenure at the Security Council 2018-2019, and we are very pleased that we have managed to put a program that highlights some of our priorities during our participation at the Security Council, particularly one of the meetings that we would like to highlight is on the 18th afternoon. We have a meeting on peace building and sustaining peace, partnerships for national-owned transitions. This meeting will be chaired by our foreign minister. This has been one of our priorities during our participation at the Council, the link between development and peace and security. And in this particular event, we will highlight the importance of partnership for sustaining peace. We will invite a representative of the World Bank. It will be also a participation and briefing of the Secretary General, and also from the African Development Bank and the head of the Peace Building Commission. Another important debate we are organizing is for the 9th. It's an open debate. This is on threats to international peace and security, the linkages between international terrorism and organized crime. As you know, in the past, Peru experiences and suffered terrorism, and now at the Council, we are chairing the Counterterrorism Committee. And the nexus between terrorism and organized crime is a problem that is appearing in different forms in different regions. In Latin America, it's mostly related to drugs issues, terrorism and narco-traffic. In our regions, it's more with human traffic, arms traffic. So this nexus is an issue that's very important for us as Peru, our region. I think also the international community will be an open debate. We are working also on a resolution highlighting this problem and how we should address it. Another important briefing is on the 17th regarding the maintenance of international peace and security, implementing youth peace and security. Last year, Peru with Sweden promoted and approved by the Council a resolution on youth peace and security, and now after a year we'll see how this issue has been progressing, and we will have briefers from civil society, particularly young women. We will have also a discussion on a briefing on the triangular cooperation, Secretariat, troop contributing country, and also the Security Secretariat. And we are going to bring as briefer for this Chief Commander of the Mali mission. And this will take place on the 10th of July. We are taking advantage on these days. There is a meeting here at the UN headquarters with the Chief of Staff from several missions. We are also having the quarterly brief open debate on Middle East and the Palestinian problem. And we'll have additionally several meetings regarding missions like we'll have on the, I will revise, follow week by week. On the first week, we'll have a briefing on the UN Regional Preventive Diplomacy Center for Central Asia. We'll have consultations also on Syria, Middle East, and particularly on the chemical weapons issue. We'll have on the second week, as I mentioned, the open debate on the nexus of terrorism and organized crime, but also the one on triangular cooperation. The third week, we will have the meeting on UNMA, the mission for the implementation of the Hodeidah Agreement. We will have a briefing regarding a letter from the Russian Federation regarding the issue of Ukraine. And we will have on the residual mechanism of international tribunals on the 17th. On the 18th, as I mentioned, in the afternoon, this is the high-level briefing with our minister, but in the morning we have Middle East on Yemen, and we will have Martin Griffiths as a briefer, and also Mr. Lowcock from the Secretariat on OCHA. The 19th is a meeting, a briefing regarding Colombia. It will be the special representative, Ruiz Massieu, who will be briefing the Council. And we will have also a briefing on the next week, as I mentioned, the quarterly Middle East open debate. We will have on the 24th a MONUSCO briefing and consultations. In the afternoon, a briefing on UNOWAS and also consultation. On the 25th, we will have Middle East Syria consultations, political. Geir Pedersen will be the briefer, the special envoy. And on the 29th is Yunus Mil on Libya. We will have Ghassam Salameh, the special envoy. On the 30th, we'll have the adoption of the resolution of UNFICIP, and a briefing on Middle East, Syria, Humanitarian, with Mark Lowcock as main briefer. We'll be closing our presidency. It will be the 30th, the end of presidency. And additionally, I would like to mention that Peru is also taking advantage to organize a cultural event on the 22nd. It will be an exhibition of a Peruvian painter, Fernando Pasos, regarding children and peace and war. It is a summary of our program. You have a program, maybe we can enter to the details. Sorry. Yes, and one of the main activities also during the month is our trip to Colombia. We have received an invitation by the Foreign Minister of Colombia. The Council agreed to visit Colombia between the 11th and the 14th. We are arranging the details of that visit, but we will be one day in Bogota, meeting with all the authorities, civil society, all the representatives, the FARC. And the second day, we will travel to one of the areas where, espacios territoriales, as they call, and we will meet people there. So this is a very important visit, second time the Council is coming to Colombia, and we are going to stress our commitment to the peace process there in Colombia. This is in a nutshell what we are planning for July. Of course, there will be other issues that will appear regarding the international, there are several hotspots right now, and most probably we'll have some additional points to be included in our program. So thank you very much. And we are now open to any question or comments. Please.
Thank you, Ambassador. So now is the moment for the questions and answers. Just if you can, please introduce yourselves and the media outlet which you work for. And just to remember, the questions in English will be answered in English, and the question in Spanish will be answered in Spanish. So please, you have the word.
Thank you. Valeria Rebecco from ANSA, and thank you, Ambassador, on behalf of the United Nations Correspondent Association for this press conference. and the best of luck. We wish you the best of luck for this month of presidency. My question is on Iran. Are you planning to hold a meeting on the situation in Iran, since the announcement today that Iran has exceeded the low enriched uranium stockpiles allowed in the nuclear agreement? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. We have not planned a specific meeting on Iran. As you know, we have discussed, we have had past weeks at least 2 consultations, but we are following closely, and most probably if there is any proposal, we will have meeting on this issue. You know, our position nationally, I can say that Peru is very much of concern of any issue related to proliferation. And we support very much the JCPOA, but we will wait, and up to now we haven't received a request for a specific meeting on this.
So maybe we can take all these 3 questions first and individually. But
no problem.
Okay, so Madam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Do you expect the Security Council to react in any way to the latest meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong-un at the Demilitarized Zone? And has there been any reaction at all among the members?
Thank you. This, again, is an extremely important issue. We have not planned any specific meeting on this important issue, but we are also following very closely. We receive information, not only by the press, we are talking among the members, the U.S. mission, and we consider personally, and I think all the members, a positive development. And as you know, in the past year, this was a very important issue. We had several meetings, and we consider that dialogue is the best way to address this difficult issue of the nuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. So we see, and we support very much the statement of the Secretary General on this regarding that, considering it a positive action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Stefano Vaccara, La Voce di New York and Radio Radicale in Rome. This is about Venezuela. Are you going to discuss this month in any way the situation in Venezuela? And then in your national capacity, do you consider the people that are escaping the country now refugees or migrants, economic migrants?
Thank you very much. We have not scheduled any specific meeting on Venezuela. As you know, also we had some meetings at the Council a few months ago, and we follow this issue as Peru, as member of the Grupo de Lima, very closely. There has been discussions a few days ago at the OAS meeting at the regional, and Peru has been participating with our minister very actively in all the resolutions approved at the OAS meeting regarding this issue. So we mostly favor that this issue be addressed at the regional level. We know that it have international, global consequences, but and regarding your question of how we treat it, we have both. No? We have migrants, temporary migrants, and also refugees. So it depends. In some cases, there has been considered refugees and some mostly migrants. Peru has been receiving huge numbers. You know, we surpassed the 800,000 Venezuelans in Peru up to now. No? So it's a very important issue. Thank you.
Gracias. ¿Puedo preguntar en español?
Thank you. May I ask a question in Spanish? Do we have interpreters? I'm from the TASS agency. You said there's going to be a meeting on Ukraine on the 16th of July. Could you tell us specifically what this is about? Is this about the language law? What is it specifically?
Solicitud de la
Yes, this stems from a request from the Russian Federation, and it's related to that particular issue. And it was announced in the previous request to have a meeting on this issue. It's an issue that's been talked about, and now it's been formalized. It's going to be held on the 16th of July.
Gracias, embajador. Celia Mendoza.
Thank you, Ambassador. Selma Mendoza, the Voice of America. I'd like to know if you could give us some more details about the trip to Colombia. You mentioned that you're going to be in Bogota and you'll be meeting with civil society and the community, and we'd like to hear a little bit more about the second part of your trip if you have any more information or details about that. And also we'd like to know if there's a possibility of talking with members of the Anuato team, to the extent that sooner or later they're going to have to deal with the Venezuela issues, since there are a lot of Venezuelans going there as well. And another question, in your national capacity, and taking into account that still there's no meeting on Venezuela, Michelle Bachelet will be giving her written report on Venezuela at the Human Rights Council in Geneva in a few days, and based on her trip to Caracas and recent events in Caracas with Capitan Acosta. And I understand that the High Commissioner's Office also asked for an investigation into his death and supposed torture. From the point of view of the Presidency of the Security Council, could you tell us whether that's going to be included on your agenda? And in your national capacity, how do you see the death of the captain? Thank you. Thank you. With regard to the trip to Colombia, as I was saying, we are setting the itinerary right now, but it's our intention to spend 2 full days visiting Colombia, 1 day in Bogota, and we have meetings scheduled or planned with all the different politicians, the government, FARC, civil society, a list of meetings that's being defined right now, along with the mission and the Colombian government. And the second day, it's our intention to go to different places where we see training and integration efforts, where you have an established program in place. We don't yet know where we'll go, but we're thinking about, we have already a short list of different places we'd like to visit. And so as soon as we have the program and the itinerary defined, we'll make it public so you're aware of it. But we are very interested and very committed to having as broad and complete program as possible. With regard to the Guaido government in Venezuela and his representatives, we don't think we should mix the topics. There's the terms of reference of the visit to Colombia have been approved by the Council. They're very clear, and there's no topic that's not related to the peace process in Colombia that we'll be dealing with. With regard to Madame Bachelet's report, we're aware of the situation. In our national capacity, we are very concerned. Our country is very concerned with recent events in Venezuela, especially the most recent information about this assassination. It's not yet clear as to what happened. And I received a communique today from the Lima group, and there we'll see what Peru's definitive reaction is vis-a-vis this serious violation of human rights and what our stance is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, and good afternoon. I'm Rob Reynolds with Al Jazeera English. You are no doubt aware of the continuing humanitarian crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border, with many thousands of asylum seekers being forced to stay in Mexico before they can present their case to the United States. And recently, we've also seen reports of squalid conditions in U.S. Immigrant detention centers with children being kept in very potentially illegal conditions under international law. So as the head of the Security Council for July, and also in your capacity as the leader of or ambassador of a Latin American nation, I'd ask you if the UN is going to do anything or make any inquiries or send any teams to this area to find out more about the conditions these people are living under.
Agradecemos la pregunta, pero le puedo.
You did raise the question. This is not a council issue.
I thank you for the question. I will say clearly it's not a point, an issue that we have discussed or will discuss at the council. What we can say is that national terms, Peru follows very closely every issue regarding migration. I mentioned a few minutes ago that the issue of migration for Peru is extremely complicated. We are not only a country of migrants, but also we are now receiving migrants. So the issue is extremely important for us. So we analyze any issue regarding this situation very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. It's Pamela Falk from CBS News. Are you aware of any, or are you working on any statement by the Council about the attacks that just took place in Kabul in Afghanistan? And is there any meeting that has been called or you are interested in setting up about the recent attacks? Also, if you could, just give your take, national capacity or as President of the Council, on why these attacks are taking place as peace talks are happening. Thank you.
Yes, we are dismayed. We are really concerned about this latest attack. As you know, the Council visited last year Kabul, and we stressed very much the importance of dialogue, and we met all the representatives of the government, parliament, civil society. We encouraged very much all the parties. And we know about these negotiations that are taking place, so it's an additional motive, a reason for concern. We believe that a peaceful, negotiated solution is the only way to get out of this difficult situation in Kabul, so in Afghanistan. Sorry. We haven't heard not a request, a specific request for a meeting on this issue, but for sure, we just received the presidency. We only have one opportunity to be with the whole membership, so I assume that there will be some coordinations regarding this one and the previous difficult issues that are now at the international agenda looming over the Council. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Jordan Dagamsi from Jordan Report. I have a question about Palestine issue that's in your program. Every month, the people of Palestine look at the meeting, hoping that their misery will be ended, the occupation will be ended one day. Do you think that the Security Council will ever, in our lifetime, will be able to solve the Palestinian issue? In the view of yesterday, when 3 officials from one of your colleagues, member of Security Council, went to hammers to a town in East Jerusalem, they knock a wall, and that which leads to the holy site of Jerusalem. In this view, what is the role of the President of Security Council when you will be unable to issue a statement, even to the press, without the consensus of all member states? And do you think, like in 20 years, when Peru will be again elected to the Security Council, do you think the Palestinian issue will remain as one of the hot spots by then? Thank you so much. Sorry for no hope, but this is the question.
Thank you. No, this is an issue that Peru and several other members have been mentioning systematically in the Council, that we are frustrated about the situation. We are extremely concerned that there is no progress, then there is no possibility, there is no discussion even at the Council on the reality of this problem. And we encourage all the parties in order to start a political dialogue. And we are also frustrated that this idea we support very much, a two-state solution with recognized borders, is day by day more difficult to. So we are really frustrated. We want to make progress. We are always following this closely, this briefing, how the situation is evolving in the meetings monthly or the quarterly. We always stress the importance to respect the international law, the issue of settlements, how it is affecting that Resolution 2334 that we support very much as nationally. So we think that there is a big frustration, but in this situation, we will do our best. We know the challenges. We are encouraging for restraint. We know that the issue of violence is always an additional problem. The humanitarian is also additional. There are expectations of other initiatives. There is a mention of the U.S. initiative. So we are hoping that there will be light, and really it's very difficult to make an assessment or see what it will happen in 20 years, 15, 20 years, but we hope it's not. We will hope that for a solution. The problem is, I understand the positions are so entrenched and so far apart, but there are occasions that we have progress, no? We have had progress, like, for example, the Korean Peninsula, even if it is not solved. A couple of years ago, we haven't expected that they will be negotiating that difficult problem. So there is hope. We always have hope, and this is important that the Palestinians will have hope also that the issue will be solved sooner than later. Yeah.
Yes, it's Rhonda Halbin, and I do a netizen blog at tats.de, which is the Tageszeitung's website. And my question is a follow-up to Edie's. My question is, does the Council ever take up the issue of security guarantees for the DPRK? Because that's what they say will make possible the denuclearization. And so I wondered if that issue has ever been or is ever discussed. And the second piece of the question is, under Article 32, Chapter 5 of the Charter, it says that if there is a dispute, that the Council shall invite the parties without vote to the discussion of the dispute. And so I wonder if there's ever a consideration of asking the DPRK what are the kinds of security guarantees they are looking for, and having hearing from other council members as to what might be possible so that the situation, now that it's opened up, can be resolved. Thank you.
I didn't get the first part of your question. Could you repeat?
Yes, the first part of the question is about the whether on the council there is any discussion among the members of the council about security guarantees for the DPRK. The DPRK has said that it is a question of security guarantees that are adequate, which would lead to the successful denuclearization situation. So I wonder if that has ever been raised, and then if there's been, under the charter, there's a precedent for inviting them to hear their view. So I wonder, one, if the council members have ever expressed or discussed their view, and then secondly, if there's a thought to invite the DPRK to hear from them about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, as you know, as I mentioned, this is an issue that there has been progress in terms of starting at least meetings with the U.S. and DPRK, and the Council have been receiving briefings officially and unofficially from the parties, the U.S., and there is also discussions at the Sanctions Committee, but formally at the Council we haven't had a discussion on the guarantees you were mentioning. I think it's important in every negotiation to know strictly the positions of each party, and I think the guarantees is very important, but we haven't had a broad discussion on that, and I know that this is mostly now treated in a bilateral way, and the opportunities we have had from the U.S. on briefings, we support very much what they are doing in terms of dialogue with the leadership of the Dprk, and we look forward to this recent announcement of new meetings. So it's very important. Thank you.
Or just the question is, the charter calls on the Security Council to invite, not, to invite the party and to hear from the parties. And so it seems you hear from the U.S., but the question of inviting the DPRK on this issue and hearing from them and any other parties that are involved, is there, I wonder if in your national capacity you have any thoughts about that?
I don't have any additional comment on that.
I have two questions. This is Kevin Pinner from Sankei Shimbun. On the, you said the U.S. mission has been giving you briefings about the DPRK USA situation. Have you received a briefing following the meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong-un? And if so, can you speak about whether working level dialogue is expected to resume from the U.S.'s point of view? And the second issue is unrelated. It's about China. The Xinjiang autonomous region's minority Muslim population has been, there's a lot of troubling reports about what's been happening there. Recently, the top terrorism official from the UN was sent there for a visit, and a number of Security Council member states objected. Does Peru view what's happening in Xinjiang to the Muslim minority as a humanitarian issue or a counterterrorism issue? And do you think it's a threat to international peace and security?
Regarding the first question, we have receiving informally, as I mentioned, it's not a formal meeting. Whenever a delegation have information to provide to the other members, it's very informally. This morning, for example, we had our traditional breakfast, and in that we exchange views. If there is any particular issue one delegation would like to share, and we receive, for example, comments very informally from the U.S. delegation on the recent developments. So that's a normal practice at the Council, no? And so that's regarding the second one. I have no comment. We are following, as you know, every country follows international information about this. We haven't had any specific position on that yet.
Thank you. Carla Stay, Global Research. This is a follow-up on Edie's question and Rhonda's question. Actually, there are two parts. The so-called humanitarian exemptions to the sanctions on North Korea have been notoriously failing, so much so that the UN Human Rights Rapporteur on North Korea expressed alarm. And when there's this much failure and that much expertise at the Security Council, one has to wonder whether this is accidental. And as a follow-up, there was an interesting report in the New York Times today that there is consideration of a freeze for freeze, which would accept North Korea's current status as Pakistan and India and probably Israel and a number of other countries. In that event, if that should become a reality, would the sanctions automatically be lifted?
The issue of sanctions is regularly discussed, this aspect of the humanitarian exemptions. And if you follow our interventions, Peru has been very clear on that. We always ask that these humanitarian exemptions be respected. We are very much concerned that civil society, civil population suffer from this, particularly when there is scarce food and medicine. So this is an issue for us extremely important, but we know also that sometimes it's very difficult to focus when this is a real situation. But we, as Peru, always highlighted the importance that take a priority if there is a request for a humanitarian, that it should be given. So we follow this issue extremely closely. There was a second...
The second part of the question. According to the New York Times today, there is actually consideration of a freeze for freeze.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And in that case, would the sanctions automatically be lifted? And what opposition could there be to such a...
At this stage, it's very difficult to... I think that there were... the U.S. has referred to that specific this point that you mentioned recently. So we are already following closely what has been announced at the press, but haven't had any discussion on that at the Council.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Just Evelyn Leopold, independent media. I just want to clarify what you said on Colombia. Is the meeting going to be on Colombia's peace or the Venezuelan refugees, or both? The meeting on the 19th.
We have, as I mentioned, on the 19th is a meeting on the Colombia. Is a quarterly discussion we have, and the briefing will be the special representative, Mr. Luis Massieu. So this is a regular meeting we have about the verification mission in Colombia. Nothing regarding Venezuela. No.
Ben Ivansky, Fox News. Just back on Venezuela, do you see this as a missed opportunity by not bringing up Venezuela in this month's Council program?
No, as I mentioned, we have had meetings, and whenever there is necessity of a meeting, we have requested for a meeting. No, in this case, for the month, we did not include because, as I also mentioned in a previous question, this issue has been being discussed very recently, this week in Colombia. So basically, the things that we can do. And we discussed that. There were at least 3 resolutions approved on Venezuela at the OS. So basically, it's an issue of sometimes it's convenient, sometimes it's not necessary. But this doesn't mean that in the future we can have one.
On Venezuela, follow-up is because before, a few months ago, some countries were saying there actually was not an issue at Venezuela that the Security Council should be concerned because it was an internal problem. And then the discussion was because it was a refugee issue, because it was going to affect all the country around, was a Security Council. So in your national capacity, what is exactly the position, your position, Peru position on this issue? Is Venezuela an issue that the Security Council has to look at it?
I think in this issue we have been very, very clear. No, Peru and several other regional important countries have stressed that the situation in Venezuela is an international problem. It's not an internal problem. And we have been saying that for a few months, few years. Finally, it has been recognized that it's not an internal problem. It's an international problem because not only of the migrants, 4 million migrants of Venezuela abroad, but also for the risk for the whole region, in tension in the region because of the human rights violations, no, the internal situation. This is our national position. We have been saying that very clearly. Regarding the Security Council, no, we have discussed, as I mentioned, in a few months before, we have had at least 3 discussions. So for us, for Peru, and I'm talking, as you know, as Peru, this is an issue that have implication for international peace and security. So it's a normal issue. What happens is that at the council there are different positions. So it's difficult when you have a council that is divided on a specific issue. That's the reason, as I mentioned, sometimes it's important for these issues to be discussed at the regional level, and it has been discussed in the past week and the past days at the regional level. I do not discard that in the future it will come again, but this is our position right now, for the month, we have not included. We consider it not useful, but it could be later on because of the gravity of the situation, as I mentioned.
Ahora que menciona,
Since you're mentioning the OAS, something that I'm curious about, just in your national committee, at the OAS meeting, a number of resolutions are adopted which have supported Juan Guaidó. In the Lima group, do you intend to work with the contact group for these future negotiations? And do you expect that there will be negotiations, at least in Norway? There are ongoing talks. I think they're going to be beginning as well in Barbados, because given the death of Captain Acosta, the opposition is not continuing with these discussions. But how do you expect the negotiations will move forward in this environment? Thank you for that question. We're getting a little off topic in terms of the council agenda, but let me just say quite briefly that the Lima group had a meeting with the contact group here in New York, and we agree on a number of points as they relate to the humanitarian agenda, a very serious topic. And there are other issues on which we are united. We would like there to be free and transparent elections as soon as possible, and we want to work with other stakeholders. We've agreed that we need to work with actors who are interested in the country and who can make a contribution to a solution. So that's where we are now. We know that meetings have been proposed by the Norwegian government, and we also intend to have a meeting in Lima at the beginning of August on the situation in Venezuela. So it is an issue that's very important, that is on the agenda, in particular for Peru. But as I said, we're getting outside of the purview of the Security Council, but I just wanted to explain our position on that. Thank you. So if there are no further questions.
A ver, la última.
Okay, the last one, please. Two, here and here. In the back?
It's concerning. There seems to be no clear information. I understand that sanctions have been put on two very capable foreign ministers, Jorge Arias of Venezuela and Zarif of Iran. The question is, I have been told by some, because they are sanctioned, that they will not be permitted to enter the United Nations, although there is an agreement with the host country that they cannot bar a legitimate diplomat from coming here. Do you have any information about that? Because nobody seems to have any answers. And if foreign ministers who are very experienced are being prohibited from entering the UN by the host country, how does the Security Council handle that?
Well, I have no detailed information on that, so I cannot answer. So.
Just to follow up to you said that you're preparing a resolution for the open debate on the 9th. On the two other big issues that you're doing, on the 17th and the 18th, are you expecting any outcomes? Is there going to be a presidential statement, press statement, resolution on either the one on implementing the youth peace and security agenda, or on the peace building and sustaining peace partnerships for national-owned transitions?
Thank you. Yes, regarding the first, effectively, we are working on the resolution. We don't know if we'll be ready for the 9th or probably the next week. We are working on that. Regarding this high-level briefing on the 18th, we are not planning a resolution, or basically, I think it will be a chair's summary, no? Because last year on this same issue we promoted and approved a resolution. This year, I think it will be enough with a chair's summary. That's basically what we are aiming at. So I don't see more. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. And we will see you